It was supposed to be an ordinary evening, a chance at love, perhaps even the start of something beautiful. For Emma Carter, a young professional going through the highs and lows of modern dating, this blind date was just another chapter in her search for companionship. She had met him online, a charming, well-spoken man named Ryan who seemed to check all the right boxes. But what unfolded that night was beyond anything Emma could have imagined, a terrifying descent into a living nightmare. If you enjoy real-life crime stories that dig into the unexpected, make sure to subscribe to Horror and Crime and hit the bell icon to never miss a chilling tale like this one. On the surface, Ryan appeared to be the perfect gentleman. His messages were thoughtful, his humor disarming. But what Emma didn't know was that behind the polished facade lurked a dangerous obsession, one meticulously concealed until it was too late. It began innocently enough, a dinner reservation at an upscale restaurant, polite conversation, and shared laughter. But as the evening progressed, subtle cracks in Ryan's demeanor started to show. A misplaced comment, an unnerving glance, a question that felt more probing than curious. Emma dismissed these moments, chalking them up to first date jitters. Yet, beneath her polite smiles and feigned ease, a faint alarm began to sound, a gut instinct she would later wish she had trusted. As the night unfolded, Emma would find herself caught in a chilling game of survival, fighting against a man who was not at all what he seemed. What could compel someone to hide such darkness beneath a mask of charm? How does an innocent dinner date spiral into a desperate fight for life? And, more importantly, how does one escape a predator who has planned every step of the trap? This is the story of Emma Carter, a cautionary tale of trust, instincts, and the terrifying realities of online dating. As we unravel the events of that fateful evening, one question remains: when faced with unspeakable danger, how far would you go to survive? And if you're captivated by stories that unravel the human psyche, don't forget to subscribe to stay with us for the next chapter in Real Life Crime Chronicles. Emma Carter was a 28-year-old marketing professional living in the bustling city of Chicago. She was vibrant, independent, and ambitious, a young woman carving out her space in the world. Friends described her as outgoing but cautious, the kind of person who planned every detail meticulously. She wasn't the type to take unnecessary risks, yet like many in her generation, she had embraced online dating as a practical way to meet people. Enter Ryan Davis, a seemingly perfect match. His profile was polished but not overdone. A finance consultant with a love for travel, he shared Emma's interests in art, cooking, and trying out new restaurants. Their conversations were easy and engaging, filled with witty banter that put her at ease. Over a few weeks of messaging, Ryan suggested meeting in person, and Emma, after a few days of deliberation, agreed. The choice of venue added to Ryan's allure. He proposed a well-known, upscale Italian restaurant, one with excellent reviews and a location in a busy part of town. For Emma, these were reassuring signs. It wasn't a dive bar on the outskirts of the city, it was a safe, public place. She shared her plans with her best friend, sending over Ryan's photo and a screenshot of their chats. It was a precaution she always took, one that gave her a sense of control. What Emma didn't know was that Ryan had been studying her long before she even swiped right on his profile. To him, she wasn't just another date, she was a target. Every detail about her life, every story she shared in their chats, was another piece of ammunition in his twisted plan. Ryan Davis was a man with a carefully constructed identity. His outward charm masked years of manipulation and control. He had a knack for reading people, for knowing just what to say to earn their trust. To him, Emma was the perfect challenge, a smart, self-assured woman who would never suspect his true intentions. He had spent weeks preparing for this night, crafting an image of himself that would disarm her defenses. But then, little things began to stand out. His questions started to feel less like conversation and more like interrogation. He seemed unusually fixated on her routines, what time she left work, where she liked to jog, who she spent her weekends with. When Emma tried to steer the conversation to lighter topics, Ryan redirected it back to her personal life, as if he were cataloging her responses. And then there was the way he looked at her. Not with admiration, but with a calculated intensity that made her skin crawl. It wasn't overt enough to send her running, but it was enough to plant the first seeds of unease. Something wasn't right, though she couldn't quite put her finger on it. As they finished their meal and Ryan suggested a short walk to a nearby coffee shop, Emma hesitated. It was a perfectly reasonable suggestion, but her instincts told her otherwise. Still, not wanting to seem paranoid, she agreed. It was a decision she would come to regret, a decision that would lead her into the darkest night of her life. The walk to the coffee shop began uneventfully. The air was crisp, the city alive with its usual bustle. Emma kept her pace steady, her unease tucked away behind polite conversation. Ryan was charming as ever, laughing at his own jokes and pointing out little landmarks along the way. Yet, as they turned down a quieter side street, Emma felt a twinge of doubt. The streetlights cast long, distorted shadows, and the noise of the city seemed to fade, replaced by an eerie stillness. When they arrived at the coffee shop, Emma was relieved to see the warm glow of lights and the faint hum of conversation from inside. But as she reached for the door, Ryan gently touched her arm. "Actually," he said with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes, "I know another spot nearby. It's a bit quieter, more intimate." Her instinct screamed at her to decline, to make an excuse and leave, but she hesitated. After all, he hadn't done anything overtly alarming, yet. With a forced smile, she agreed, letting him lead her further away from the safety of the public cafe. The spot Ryan mentioned turned out to be a dimly lit alley leading to what appeared to be a private residence. Emma stopped in her tracks, her pulse quickening. "I'm not sure about this," she said, her voice steady but tinged with apprehension. Ryan's demeanor changed in an instant. The easygoing charm vanished, replaced by a cold, calculating gaze. "Don't be so dramatic," he said, his tone dismissive. "It's just a place I know. You'll love it." Emma stepped back, her mind racing. "I think I should go," she said firmly, her instincts finally overpowering her politeness. Ryan's grip on her arm tightened, and for the first time, she saw the mask slip completely. The man who had charmed her over dinner was gone, replaced by someone unrecognizably dangerous. "You're not going anywhere," he said, his voice low and menacing. Emma's breath caught in her throat as she realized the gravity of her situation. She looked around, searching for anyone, who might come to her aid, but the alley was empty, the city's noise a distant hum. Ryan began pulling her toward the darkened entrance, his strength overpowering her initial struggle. Emma's mind raced, adrenaline surging as she fought to stay calm. She knew she had to think fast, to outsmart him before it was too late. Emma feigned compliance, allowing him to believe she was too scared to resist. As they reached the door, she pretended to trip, grabbing onto the railing and yanking it with all her might. The unexpected move threw Ryan off balance, and Emma used the moment to twist free from his grip. She bolted, her feet pounding against the pavement as she ran back toward the lights of the city. But Ryan was quick. She could hear his footsteps gaining on her, his angry shouts echoing in the night. Emma darted into a convenience store, the harsh fluorescent lights and startled faces of customers offering a fleeting sense of safety. She collapsed near the counter, gasping for breath, as the clerk called 911. Momentary relief is overshadowed by a sense of foreboding. Ryan didn't follow her into the store. Instead, he disappeared into the night, leaving Emma shaken and terrified. But she knew this wasn't over. Ryan had made it clear, this wasn't just a date gone wrong. He had planned this, and he wasn't the type to give up easily. As the police arrived and began their investigation, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that Ryan was still watching, waiting for another opportunity. The nightmare had only just begun. What Emma didn't know was that Ryan had left behind a trail of chilling evidence that would reveal the depths of his obsession and the horrifying lengths he was willing to go to claim his prey. When the police arrived at the convenience store, Emma recounted the night's events in trembling detail. Her voice cracked as she described Ryan's sudden shift from charming to sinister, his calculated attempt to lure her into isolation, and the sheer terror of her escape. Officers immediately began their investigation, piecing together the fragments of a case that would reveal far more than anyone anticipated. The first step was identifying Ryan Davis. Emma provided the information she had: his dating profile, their message history, and the name he had given her. However, a closer look at his online presence revealed alarming inconsistencies. The name Ryan Davis was tied to multiple social media accounts, each with varying details about his life. It became clear that Ryan had created a web of false identities, carefully curated to manipulate his victims. Investigators traced the phone number he used to contact Emma and found that it was registered to a prepaid account purchased with cash. Security footage from the restaurant where they had dinner provided their first real breakthrough, a clear image of Ryan entering and exiting the building. His demeanor on the footage was calm, composed, and utterly unremarkable, belying the danger he posed. But the deeper the police dug, the darker the picture became. Through a painstaking search of dating app records and other digital footprints, they uncovered that Emma wasn't Ryan's first target. He had matched with at least 3 other women in the past year, each reporting eerily similar encounters. 2 had cut the date short after feeling uneasy, but 1 woman had vanished entirely. Her disappearance was still an open case. The investigation gained momentum when officers discovered a chilling clue: a storage unit rented under one of Ryan's aliases. Inside, they found a disturbing array of items: a collection of women's personal belongings, surveillance equipment, and what appeared to be detailed notes on potential targets, including Emma. The meticulousness of his planning sent chills through the investigative team. This was not a man acting on impulse, this was a predator who operated with precision. While the storage unit provided damning evidence, Ryan himself remained elusive. He had no fixed address, no immediate family in the area, and seemed to vanish into thin air after the night of the failed abduction. Officers issued an arrest warrant and circulated his image across law enforcement networks, warning that he was armed and dangerous. The revelations shook Emma to her core. Learning that she was one of many targets, and that Ryan had been stalking her, left her feeling violated and vulnerable. The community, too, was rattled by the case. Local news outlets ran stories warning about the dangers of online dating, sparking debates about personal safety and the risks of meeting strangers. Just as the case seemed to hit a standstill, a critical piece of evidence surfaced. An anonymous tip led police to a secluded motel on the city's outskirts. Surveillance footage confirmed that Ryan had been staying there under yet another alias. By the time officers arrived, however, he was gone, but not without leaving behind another disturbing clue. Inside the motel room, investigators found a wall covered in photographs and notes. It was a chilling timeline of Ryan's movements and plans, with Emma's face at the center. The photos included images of her at work, entering her apartment, and even jogging in her neighborhood. Each one was labeled with dates and times, further cementing the calculated nature of his actions. The discovery raised more questions than answers. How long had Ryan been following Emma? What was his ultimate endgame? And, most terrifyingly, where was he now? As the police intensified their search, Emma lived in a state of constant fear, knowing Ryan was still out there. But one thing was clear: he had made a critical mistake by leaving behind such an extensive trail. The question now was whether law enforcement could piece it all together before Ryan struck again. After weeks of relentless searching, the breakthrough came from an unlikely source. Ryan had been using a burner phone to coordinate his movements, but a slip-up led him to connect briefly to public Wi-Fi at a small diner. This was the crack investigators needed. They traced the signal to a rural cabin rented under one of his many aliases. When officers arrived, Ryan was caught completely off guard, sitting at a desk surrounded by more evidence of his calculated crimes, journals, photographs, and surveillance equipment. Ryan's arrest made headlines, his face plastered across every major news outlet. The public was horrified by the details emerging about his crimes, and Emma's story became a rallying cry for online dating safety. As the trial approached, the courtroom was packed with reporters, activists, and victims of similar predators, all eager to see justice served. The prosecution presented a mountain of evidence, weaving a chilling narrative of Ryan's calculated predation. Witnesses included the women he had targeted, investigators who uncovered his trail, and Emma herself, whose harrowing testimony painted a vivid picture of the fear and strength she had experienced that night. Emma's voice shook as she described the moment Ryan's mask slipped and her fight for survival began. "I thought I was going to die," she said, her words resonating in the silent courtroom. Her bravery in recounting the events not only strengthened the prosecution's case but also inspired countless others who had faced similar ordeals. Ryan's defense team attempted to frame him as a man with a troubled past, claiming he suffered from mental health issues that clouded his judgment. They argued that the evidence, while disturbing, didn't prove intent to harm. But the meticulous notes, the photographs, and the storage unit filled with women's belongings painted a damning picture. The jury was unmoved. After days of deliberation, the jury returned with a unanimous verdict, guilty on multiple charges, including attempted kidnapping, stalking, and unlawful confinement. Ryan was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. As the judge read the sentence, Emma felt a mix of relief and lingering unease. Justice had been served, but the scars of that night would remain with her forever. The case sent shockwaves through the community and beyond, igniting conversations about the dark side of online dating. Advocacy groups called for stricter regulations on dating platforms, emphasizing the need for better user safety measures. Police departments launched awareness campaigns, teaching people how to recognize warning signs and protect themselves. Emma, despite her trauma, became a vocal advocate for online safety. She worked with nonprofits, sharing her story to educate others and push for change. Her courage turned her from a victim into a symbol of resilience and empowerment. As the courtroom emptied and the media frenzy subsided, Emma took a moment to reflect on how her life had changed. She had faced unspeakable terror and emerged stronger, though not unscathed. "I survived because I trusted my instincts," she later said in an interview. "And if sharing my story saves even one person, then it was worth it." But for all the relief brought by Ryan's conviction, the case served as a grim reminder: predators like him don't operate in isolation. How many others are out there, hiding behind screens, waiting for their chance to strike? The fight for safety doesn't end in a courtroom. It begins with awareness, vigilance, and the courage to speak up, because, as Emma learned, survival often depends on it. As Ryan Davis began his life sentence behind bars, Emma Carter's ordeal left an indelible mark, not just on her, but on everyone who followed her story. Her experience served as a haunting reminder of how easily trust can be exploited in the digital age, where the line between genuine connection and deception is perilously thin. Emma's bravery in escaping and confronting her attacker became a beacon of hope for others. But beyond her courage, the case illuminated a darker truth about the dangers lurking behind seemingly innocuous online interactions. How many of us have ignored that faint alarm in the back of our minds, convincing ourselves that we're being overly cautious? Emma's story reminds us that sometimes, listening to that instinct can mean the difference between life and death. Would you recognize the warning signs if someone you met online wasn't who they claimed to be? How far would you go to protect yourself or a loved one from harm? These are the questions Emma's story forces us to confront, a stark challenge to rethink how we approach personal safety in an increasingly interconnected world. For Emma, life after Ryan has been a journey of healing and rebuilding. While the trauma of that night remains, she has channeled her pain into advocacy, partnering with organizations to spread awareness about online safety. She's turned her story into a force for good, ensuring that others are better equipped to navigate the potential dangers of meeting strangers online. This case underscores the importance of vigilance and preparedness in all interactions, especially with those we meet through online platforms. It's not just about trusting others, it's about trusting ourselves, our instincts, and the measures we take to protect our well-being. What lessons do you take away from Emma's story? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you or someone you know experienced a situation where intuition made the difference? We want to hear your voice, because these conversations are what drive change. In our next episode of Real Life Crime Chronicles, we'll uncover the chilling story of a honeymoon that turned deadly, a couple's dream vacation that became a waking nightmare. Stay tuned as we unravel another tale of love, betrayal, and survival. Remember, no one is invincible. Stay cautious, stay prepared, and always prioritize your safety. Until next time, thank you for watching Horror and Crime, Deep Secrets. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more real-life crime stories that remind us of the fragile line between trust and terror.